All right, everybody, we are getting ready to begin the Odyssey movie review. Mm. All right, everybody, we are getting ready to start the Odyssey 2026 Christopher Nolan action adventure epic movie review right after this ad break. Um, this will be spoiler free, and I just going to kind of give you a little bit of a brief overview of what this action adventure um, film touches on. Obviously, this is the story by Homer, and it has never been done on the big screen, which honestly I thought was kind of interesting. I was listening to, I've probably listened to 5 to 10 different podcasts, 5 to 10 different YouTube videos just about the making of it, the legacy of the Odyssey, what's actually been going on from behind the scenes of the controversies, so to speak, all the different aspects of this movie. Christopher Nolan has been one of my most beloved directors to watch, especially growing up as a young man, having seen um, almost all of his movies, anything from Memento. Um, Grew up, I was like in the sixth or seventh grade when the Batman Begins came, and of course followed up by the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises, and all in between that seeing Interstellar and Dunkirk, and just seeing the flow of his different movies and how he really crafts a tale. um Everyone has seen the major if you're a Nolan head, whatever you want to call it, a film lover, um then you've probably seen most of his movies. If even if you were not into, the auteur of it all, if you're not like in the know, most of the average individuals that grew up with his films have seen the majority of his filmography. And I think the Odyssey is honestly like the cherry on top that goes with the uh beret of his library that he has been crafting for the past 15 to 20 years. When Memento was uh, almost 30 years ago at this point, so it's almost 3 decades of um, Christopher Nolan's films. And of course, I don't want to forget that his brother has been a large part of that in the writing section of his filmography as well, crafting some screenplays. But um, of course, this is written and directed by him, and it does take the story originally a poem by Homer, and he puts it on the big screen unlike anything you've ever seen before. It is definitely a modern day take on this epic tale. And he takes some liberties with a little bit of the modern day speech mixed in with kind of like like a British triumph sprinkled into it. So you're going to have a little bit of the modern day vernacular, I guess is what you would call it. But, um, y- you know, all of that aside, putting aside all of the quote unquote controversies or whatever that were coming out before the film, they mean absolutely nothing compared to the spectacle, to compared to this um ultimate feature that you are going to experience. This is a film that needs to be seen on the biggest screen you can possibly see. Now, if you can see it on the 70 millimeter, if you can see it on the IMAX, Limax, whatever you can see it on, the biggest, best screen you should see it on immediately. I would grab your friends, grab your family, whoever you like watching and experiencing film with. This is the reason that you go to the movies. The Odyssey 2026 at 2 hours and 52 minutes, rated R, is absolutely worth every minute, every dollar that you're going to spend to get there. Um, and whatever you got to do to see it in that format, the biggest, best format you can possibly do it. Because this is the reason, you know, people are going back to the theaters. I mean, there's a big um movement of individuals, or just kind of as a trend of people saying that cinema is dying, but there's also this silver lining of amazing filmmakers out there, and I'm gonna say, Christopher Nolan's the top bar, but we don't want to like um, overshadow the other uh, films that have come out previously this year of storytelling and experience with regards of obsession and backrooms, and kind of going along the same lines of um, epic storytelling that has been coming down the pipe recently. Of you want to experience these stories on a big scale. You want to experience them with people. I think that there is this um, you know, movement that is kind of going against the trend of saying that cinema is dying. I think that I saw somewhere where we're on track to hit one of the biggest box office years in quite a long time. I know that we were starting to plummet a little bit, but think about like Project Hail Mary is another big one as well. Project Hail Mary came by uh, with the Andy Weir novel that became the Phil and Phil and Phil Miller, Phil Lord, Chris Miller, I think, productions, and they directed one hell of a movie there. That was another big feature that deserved to be seen big scale, biggest, best, loudest screen, that you could experience it in. Because without a doubt, not just saying that those are enjoyable films to watch, but all of those films, including the Odyssey, are experiences. And Christopher Nolan creates experiences for individuals to experience storytelling on such an epic scale that you have never seen anything like it, and with detail and realism that brings it almost to a point of like documentarian status. It just I This is the first movie I believe that has ever been filmed entirely on IMAX cameras. Now, if you're a real film goer, film head, whatever, you know that these are gigantic cameras. They are loud and they're hard to work with. And for him to have been able to accomplish something like this on such an epic scale is a feature in its own. It's on track to uh, I think, make back the majority of its budget in the next week or two, um, sitting at about a $250 million budget, I want to say, and it's on track to make about, oh, I think that he's going to make over 100 million this weekend just in domestic box office, and I think there's going to be a possibly another 150 worldwide. Now, this is a um Pictures, Universal Studios, um, story, and the actual story is universal because it's very worldly renowned. So it's more than likely going to do pretty decent worldwide as well. And I'm hearing that he might have made his 250 back in the next week or two. Um, of course, that's um, we'll have to see how it plays out, but the majority of critics, what they're saying, and I agree with the majority of the critics, that this is, you know, once in a lifetime kind of filmmaking, and with the exception of a few individuals that would say that they have, some weak spots within the film. They're saying some actors aren't as strong as the others, or I can only see this actor on here as, um, yeah, I like, for instance, I'm hearing like Tom Holland might stick out, and all they're seeing is Tom Holland or something like that. But it's hard not to be completely immersed in this film. For me, I was completely locked in from about once once you get in lockstep with how he tells the story. Because I feel like sometimes when you are being thrown into a Christopher Nolan movie, you kind of have to understand that you're already placed in like the third act or the second act, and you have to like look around to see where exactly you are within the story. And once you understand how he plays the progression of most of his stories, they many of them play with time, many of them play with, or many of them have the aspects and themes and tonal themes of a man trying to get home. um, and it's on so many levels. It honestly leaves the the watcher speechless. And I just remember we were on the third row of the theater. We watched it in RPX, so it was one of the bigger screens. It wasn't quite the LIMAX, but it was a pretty damn big screen. And of course, we were about as close to the screen as you could get without everyone having distorted faces. I mean, a couple of shots, it was a little bit like whoa, that kind of deal. But other than that, I was like, we were like in, we were engrossed in this story. Um, One thing about this movie is I had no idea that it was going to be such a horror film. So many aspects of the Homer's Odyssey tale is quite disturbing. And I'm not going to go into too much detail of it. Actually, as a matter of fact, this is going to be a completely spoiler free review. But just saying that um, we had to read the Odyssey in high school, I believe. I want to say it was like 10th or 11th grade. And reading it is one thing. It's like, oh, there's some mystical elements of it, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's scary. Oh, that'd be quite frightening. That would be unsettling." There's different things, but seeing it on screen, and of course having Nolan's visual realistic depictions of things that are shown in kind of a fantastical scale, and having the actual scale of some of these things that are happening, monster wise, you're just like, good God, this would be horrifying to experience, and like, get me home as fast as possible. um the cast is out of this world. I would say that you have nearly two-thirds of Hollywood's favorite actors and actresses in this film. You have a lot of uh, his go-to cast that he's built quite like a library of individuals that he's worked with, and some new individuals that are also in this as well. I'm talking anyone from let's go a little bit down the cast just for a second. I'm not going to be able to name everybody, but some of the individuals that have some of the most screen time: Matt Damon, we talked about Tom Holland, we got Robert Pattinson, Corey Hawkins, Elliot Page is in there a little bit, um, Anne Hathaway, John Leguizamo's amazing in this. I haven't seen him do anything like this before. Um, and Charlize Theron is like on like poster. And she's not on the posters, but her name's on the poster. But she has quite a big presence as well. And um, uh, there's so many Hamish Patel. There's so many individuals in this movie that I would just be sitting here all day naming everybody that's on there. But those are some of my favorite that were featured throughout the film. And you have A-list stars that are leading their own movies featured in this movie for like 30 seconds. That's how big this cast is. And I've heard mixed feelings about people saying, oh, was Matt Damon as Odysseus? Was he cast correctly? Is this really his film? Should he have had this part? And I absolutely agree that he should have had this part. He from what it's been years since I've uh, read the Odyssey, so I don't remember the character of Odysseus too much. I just kind of had, like blank face, stereotypical protagonist kind of guy. But what I've heard is that he's a little bit more um, sly, I guess, in the poem, and in this he plays a little bit more, I'd say, brazen. And I guess that's a little bit vague, but I'd say that he's definitely has more pathos in this, and has more of an emotional pull in the guise of like regret. And so, still talking in non spoilers, that this is a movie that is playing with time. You are jumping across different points of time from different perspectives, learning about where certain characters are, and other characters are trying to find each other. Telemachus, played by Holland, is basically his son trying to find Odysseus, and the majority of the movie is um, Matt Damon, Odysseus, remembering the previous things that have happened. I'd say the first 2 hours are essentially him remembering, the Battle of Troy, the Trojan Horse, the trials and tribulations that him and his crew had to face, and us as the uh, viewer are catching up with him to figure out how he got to where he's at. And this is an overarching story of a man trying to get back home. And, with saying that, his Odysseus's wife, Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, is being uh, very patient, I'd say, having to deal with the possibility of not knowing if Odysseus is alive or dead. And the fact is, she has to entertain 30 to 50 different types of suitors that want the throne. It's a little bit of the Game of Thronesification of this story. And she's very much like the queen in waiting. And Robert Pattinson as Antinius, I believe is how you pronounce it. is kind of playing one of the suitors that is really gunning for the throne. And I don't really want to talk about, who's who's on what side too much right now. If we want to do a little bit more in depth of a review on there, we can, and kind of get into spoilers. But the way that this movie plays out is just, it feels like it flicks a, it feels like you flick, a match, and the match is going along like a line of gasoline, and then just once it hits that first explosion, you're like, oh my gosh. You're like, just boom after boom after boom after boom. It just feels like smaller, from the way that it kind of goes like small scope to bigger scope to bigger scope to bigger scope to bigger scope to like, oh my god, this, I can't even begin. This is like an unwieldy story. And like, I just picturing like Nolan having to, cram all of this story and all of these different viewpoints and characters, um, into this picture that is under 3 hours. I mean, Oppenheimer was at, I think, just at 3 hours. Um, and, it, in some parts, some people would say that Oppenheimer dragged a little bit, but once you rewatch it, I think a few times, you can be like, oh yeah, yeah, I can kind of feel it, where it it flows a little bit better. But this movie is just like, how did he do all this? How did he tell this story in such a condensed fashion? And if 3 hours sounds like a long movie to you, I mean, an hour and a half is almost nothing. So just think of it as like 2 hour and a half movies, because the movie is honestly kind of divided into two or three different sections. And so I'd say that almost like 45-minute episodic sections of the movie. I mean, it flows completely like a movie, but it definitely has like sections within it where you're like, okay, now here we're at where the men come in and they're going on a mission, and okay, here's the battle scene, and then here's some backstory. It kind of feels a little bit episodic in the way, but not in a bad way that you would say that it was chopped up. Um, but yeah, the Odyssey, I would 100% recommend it. We don't really do the numbering of the reviews anymore, but I would probably give this a 9 out of 10. I think that it hits emotional highs in the third act that absolutely bring it all together. Ludwig Göransson and Hoyt van Hoytema bring the sight and the sound from his previous movies. Ludwig previously had worked with him on Tenet, and the cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema was the cinematographer on Oppenheimer, and he also did Tenet, and he's also the director, cinematographer of Dunkirk. And so he's been working with Nolan for quite a while now, and he's made some pretty very visually interesting um, pieces of cinema. I mean, only even alongside of Nope was one of my favorite non-Nolan films that he's made recently that just really stuck out. I was like, this is amazing to look at. And so yeah, absolutely go see this movie. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. Put you in the comments. What is your favorite Nolan film? I'd say that this is up there with how the Batman Begins kind of mixed in with the Dark Knight Rises, sprinkled in with like Inception and Interstellar, and so much of the father trying to get home. And I guess I just never had realized how many times he's made parts of this story in other films that he's created, and it just really feels like all it was a culmination of everything he's ever been doing has all led up to this. Absolutely would recommend it. Yeah, let me know what your favorite Nolan films are. I think right now this is probably it's probably Inception, Dark Knight, Odyssey, and then Interstellar. Maybe it might be fighting for Interstellar for number 3, so I think that's my top 3 right now, but let me know what y'all think. Hit me up on LuckyDog Podcast on your favorite social media. We are live several times a week on Twitch, and we post VODs on YouTube and have uh, more in-depth coverage on our Patreon. Check out our links out. Of course, and speaking of Batman, Amadeus, I could looking like Batman in there. Benny Safdie. I had no idea who was under that mask. I thought that was crazy. But yeah, amazing performances. Quite a impressive uh, debut of Travis Scott on the big screen. He it if you don't know who he is, you're gonna be like, "Oh, that was a good performance." But to see him, I was like, "Well, I guess he did it. I guess he did it." And yeah, anything that is kind of on the negative side, I just can't think of anything else that may. I had a little bit of I heard through the grapevine some people had a little bit of an issue with some of the dialogue. The dialogue never really irked me. I felt like it was very Christopher Nolan esque. It always kind of kept the story progressing. It gave you just enough of a sprinkle of this is what you need to know at this point of the story, and you'll find out the rest by the end. It doesn't leave you hanging in a way. So that's what I liked. But yeah, let me know what you think about the Odyssey 2026, and take it easy.